What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the XRP price chart along with the Bitcoin price chart, which saw a ton of volatility yesterday, coming off the most recent Fed meeting, happening live during the Federal Reserve interest rate cut meeting yesterday, where Jerome Powell cut the rate by 25 basis points and essentially gave forward guidance of, we're probably not cutting anymore. You see, the market is priced in with a 91% probability there will not be a cut at the next meeting on January 29th. The VIX, or the Volatility Index of the S&P 500, fired up 76% for the day, which just generally speaking is a lot of volatility in a single day. There's not many days to look back over the last few years with something that big outside of what happened there on August 5th. The Dow Jones fell 1,123 points. The Russell 2000 slams back into the 702 Fibonacci retracement level of the entire range for the last 3.5 years, while Bitcoin slams back down after setting these new highs for the last couple of days. XRP's price action, nothing unusual here. Things still looking just fine and really operating kind of how I thought we'd be, that we're really just range bound right now. I know we all want to see prices go shooting to the upside, but it just seems like a range bound setup. But there are optimistic things to look at here on the total market cap of the altcoin market. And that while things may have been pretty crazy, even during the live stream where we saw hundreds of millions of dollars liquidated from the market, things still seem to be just fine. And I'll show you why. First thing we'll start with is XRP over here. No major breakdown and a big liquidation that happened, a big volatility event that happened in the market, and no surprises. Yesterday in markets in the morning, I was still being asked, do you still think we're going to head down into those lower twos? My thoughts were that, yeah, we still would. We've now gotten down to $2.17, but I'm looking more towards over here at total 3 in the altcoin market to see when things can start rampaging their way up. And we've been talking about this type of structure over here for Bitcoin and whether or not Bitcoin's going to end up going into some type of parabolic expansion, or if Bitcoin's going to go ahead and start doing distribution right now. Our discussions for the last 6 months were that looking for waves of equal length, and that we're used to looking at Bitcoin from the standard scale, but from an inverse perspective, that we had a setup that would be looking for a wave of equal length to come in here for Bitcoin. Well, here in the last couple of days, we have gotten it. We have completely hit the target on what it was for a wave of equal length. So now we move into the phase of, is this going to be some prolonged distribution happening in here? Or will this more so resemble the continuation of the things that have happened from 2021 through 2024, like we saw in 2013 through 2017, that eventually leads into an expansion? Hard for me to put a strong belief on either one until something really shows up in here. This was what my belief was, that we would see a wave of equal length, and it has absolutely nailed it. Then we see extreme volatility come out of the stock market happen right after we get it, right? So it doesn't rule it out that it could enter into distribution here over the coming months. But even so, the price action did still behave the way I would have thought it would have reacted in the event that it is doing a parabola. So I think there's still more time for it to kind of show itself and reveal its cards. I think if we kind of headed lower like that, then it would be like, okay, it's starting to look like we are doing distribution here for Bitcoin, which can still take several months for it to play out. But right now, I don't think we did anything to clearly say one way or the other. However, we do know we hit the full target, 107,000 hit. Now, I showed this in markets in the morning why it's really not a big deal to me on whether or not Bitcoin is in distribution or if it's going into expansion, because we can kind of at least look at a framework of what the market did when either one of those things were happening. For example, here's XRP from the parabolic rise at the end of 2017 heading into early 2018. At that time, Bitcoin had already started distribution, and the peak of Bitcoin was in right here. Then XRP goes on to do another large wave, even after that had happened and once it's already in distribution. Alternatively, if you're looking at it through the lens like this, and if there's actually an expansion coming for Bitcoin, well, even in that event, right, still, you got another wave of equal length come in there for XRP. So hard for me to get too worried about the altcoin market, regardless of which one it is for Bitcoin. I could place a reasonable level of confidence on Bitcoin doing a wave of equal length, like we've talked about for the last several months, getting to that $107,000. But now we're waiting for it to kind of show its cards. And the reality is, even though this happened in here, it still was expected. I've had this in my videos since last week, expecting that, we'd get a new high, but that it would pull back, right? This is last Friday, December 13th. Here's Monday, the 16th. So this pullback definitely was expected, but I think from here, it's where you kind of get the idea on what are we going to end up doing. Are we going parabolic? Are we doing distribution here for Bitcoin? Like shown, I'm heavily more in the altcoin market than I am in Bitcoin. So it's not a huge thing for me with Bitcoin. It's more of just trying to have a framework and a blueprint on how do I need to be looking at this altcoin market here? Do I need to be thinking about it more in the lines of, it pulls back and it goes back into a retracement, and then I got to run for the hills here into a retracement, or looking at it through the lens of parabola, right? And we're just waiting for that answer to come. And well, whichever one it ends up being, that's, where I'll be like, all right, I'm pulling the trigger. But right now, I don't think you have your answer here. I think things are still okay. In addition, with the altcoin market, which is the thing I'm primarily focused on because that's where most of my bag is, this actually looks just fine, right? Even looking at it through the lens of what did happen here before expansions take place, which is what we are trying to do here for the altcoin market. We are trying to get into expansion into new highs. That even all of this is still even typical stuff before an expansion ends up happening. That when we're talking about all this parabola stuff happening over here for Bitcoin and trying to look for a parabola to show up here in the altcoin market, right? Even this is a framework of what things can look like before a parabola shows up. Notice in here, this range is happening right here near the top of this support, which is a previous resistance in here. It's very much so what we have going on in here, and I'll take that off just for now. That even this move in here, certainly nothing unusual in building a range before bull flagging and then actually going into expansion, right? This is the expansionary moment in the crypto market from back in 2017. This is right before the parabola, the thing that we keep talking about. So this structurally isn't any different than what we actually see before parabolas get put in place. And so long as these lows are holding down in here, it's really actually what you would just kind of expect. Of course, everybody wants to have things happen very quickly. Oh, alleviate the pain, get me out of here really fast. Just know it is pretty normal that we have to kind of bounce down here for a couple of days. Wouldn't be unusual for a typical range to do something like that where it stays down there for a few days. So again, nothing is broken in here. This is what things looked like before parabolas did get put in place. And right now, absolutely nothing unusual happening in the market. And nothing really out of line happening for XRP at this moment. I think just the big question is whether or not Bitcoin is doing distribution or it's doing expansion. It's definitely hit the target for where distribution could begin, but I'm not willing to rule out entirely that it could expand. I think we're just waiting for more information to come out from Bitcoin itself. And I do get it how it is watching YouTube videos, and a lot of content hedges itself and a lot of wording of being like, maybe this, then that, see, I'm right no matter what. My thoughts were that we would get into a new high. Here's just a little screen excerpt from the newsletter that was published just a few days ago, that even in the YouTube videos, it was putting that same idea here into the newsletter to show I thought we would get a new high to come in here and that it would have to pull back, but that even when that would happen, like in this scenario, which we'll talk about, that you'd get the new high and it'd pull back. But in both of those, you can see it in here, right? That's just where you are, right? You've gotten the pullback now in here. And now it's at that point of, hey, okay, go ahead and tell us which one you're going to do. Now that you've gotten the new high, you've pulled back down, tell us which one you're going to do. Are you going to go for the expansion or are you going to start the distribution? So I don't think we'll be here too long where you have to sit here and kind of waddle in the middle and be like, which one are we doing? Because the market did really kind of exactly as I thought it would, that it would go take the new high, that it would pull back in. But this particular moment is where we just kind of get our answer on, is this expansion or is this distribution? So my words are not extremely hedging themselves right now from extreme uncertainty. It's more of like, this has actually kind of been my idea for the last couple of weeks, and it's played out to this moment. And in my idea, this would actually be our deciding point, is where we're at right now. So that's just kind of what we're waiting on, which is exactly what we've talked about the videos from last week, that we would get the new high, pulls back, and then this is your deciding point. This is where we're at. I don't think anybody should be surprised by that or by the idea that Bitcoin could be going into distribution, unless if you've kind of gotten caught up in the dopamine hit of starting to believe that this thing's going to last for years on end or something like that, and kind of forgotten about the idea that, hey, these things don't tend to last more than 120 days. We're definitely over 30 days into these things. How can these things look in those last 30, 60, 90 days? And they can look like this, or they can look like this, where the top comes in and still the altcoin market just rampages into that moment. And so I'm not coming here to be like, hey, everybody run for the hills and be scared. I'm actually presenting the idea that, look, it doesn't really matter, which, I mean, I guess it matters if you're like all in Bitcoin or something, but distributions tend to do this, right? And that is how endings happen. If you think they don't happen like that, I'm trying to present you the evidence that, hey, look, you can go into distribution, and that's how the whole market comes to a conclusion. Bitcoin starts its distribution, the altcoin market rails into that, going into a parabola, and then that's the conclusion of the market, and that's how it all comes to an end. So I'm personally not in any way worried about a distribution happening, because go look throughout 2017, 2018, go look through 2021. That is the epic time of the altcoin market, is in the Bitcoin distribution. If that's just where we're at, that's just where we're at. And it would just make perfectly fine sense if that's how we get our parabola here in the altcoin market, for it to break through the high. So just trying to put things into context for people to kind of see what's going on with Bitcoin. We've kind of reached this stage of Bitcoin, for me personally, where it just doesn't matter if it's expansion or distribution. We definitely hit the target that I could imagine, which was $107,000 for waves of equal length. It makes sense if it goes into distribution. It would make sense if it's following 2014 through 2017 and it's going into expansion. But neither one of them really matter on whether or not we're going to get expansion over here in the altcoin market. I genuinely believe that's what's coming up here for the altcoin market. This is normal bucking up against the all-time high type behavior before an expansion ends up taking place and a parabola gets put into place. The only thing that Bitcoin's going to really help do is try to give that signal on where is the exit door. So in the coming days, I think we're probably still just going to waddle here where we're at right now. Same goes for XRP. It's probably going to waddle around down in here for the coming days. Kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how choppy it can be down here for a few days now that we've gotten here. However, as long as the lows hold and we watch ourselves move up and create a bull flag right over here for the altcoin market, then we may be able to go ahead and kind of stop talking about a lot of this ranging stuff and start getting back to talking about breakouts, right? I've really tried to refrain for the last 2 weeks of trying to like go with the crowd on Twitter who've been like constantly posting that XRP is about to break out. I've been really thinking we've been in a ranging context right now. But as we get ready to head into the weekend and into next week, if that bull flag gets itself presented in there, I'll go ahead and start being FOMO guy again. But for the next couple of days, my thoughts are this could definitely be Chop City down here and Chop City down in here. Right now, it'll just be about watching the lows. And then if that gets presented, we'll start being like, hey, get ready. Now, I do want to make one quick comment over here on the United States stock market. My thoughts have been that this time is different in that we are not going into an expansion in the stock market. And I think even yesterday kind of proved that to be true, that there's not going to be an expansion in the stock market. And I know that everybody's going to want to use 4-year cycles for Bitcoin and attach all the fancy narratives of block reward halvings and everything like that. But what we typically see at the 4 years is we see actual expansions happen, like back there in 2020 and 2021, or right here in 2016 and 2017, or right here in 2012 and 13. We have spent a tremendous amount of time talking about how this time is different. And notice, it is not behaving the same. So while I think things are okay right now for crypto and that we could get a parabola, it still definitely is that same mindset of being like, the clock is ticking, right? When that parabola gets put in, I'm going to be taking stuff off the table because eventually I think the chickens are going to come home to roost for the United States stock market, and crypto is tied to the United States stock market. And one of the interesting things about magical unicorn fairy dust or puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, God or a simulation. And I know that's a very goofball thing to say on the channel when we try to be serious sometimes when we're talking about magical unicorn fairy dust. It's just that I don't know any other way to describe it outside of that goofy saying. But one of the things we talked about a lot would be that United Health would be the marker of something for the top of the stock market. And obviously, we've seen our first lower low get put in here for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And I wanted to kind of just mark that of where exactly the United Health situation happened at. And then it happened on the highest daily close day, right there on December 4th, and then down ever since that day. If that isn't magical unicorn fairy dust, puppet masters pulling puppet strings, God, or simulation, after talking about that for so long that United Health would play some role in something, I think it's a little weird. So hard to put your entire investment thesis on what's going to happen with the stock market based on something like that. But sure enough, something happened. And before you think it's some type of guru magic of why we talked about United Health, it was merely just that the bubble was massive. And for the last couple of years, United Health has been the number one weighted asset in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Recently, it's now been bypassed by Goldman Sachs. However, due to the massive bubble being printed and the massive weight of the Dow being focused on United Health, it seemed like the perfect candidate to be the thing that could prick the bubble. But it's nothing new to think that we'd probably see large caps start to pull back first, and that we'd see small and mid caps try to play kind of a catch-up retracement game happening in here. Still find that to be the most likely outcome to happen in here. But these still seem to be all kind of anti-cycles things that are happening. So, we talk about not losing the forest for the trees on the little moves happening within a range. And it's kind of that same concept, too, when it comes to the stock market, too. Not like losing the forest for the trees, getting caught up into the excitement when the broader picture is probably end-of-cycle stuff happening in here. And it's important to remember that this is all very exciting, right? But this is end of cycle stuff, right? You go into the parabola, end of cycle. And so just keeping that in mind while we go through all of this, that we'll, of course, enjoy the ride, as if things get going. But then there's going to be that, hey, let me play you back into reality again real quick on what's going on with the stock market. Let me remind you how we've moved along with the stock market and what the stock market's looking like. So again, I can be optimistic, I can be encouraging, pick me up, reassurance stuff right now, trying to get into that parabola. Just remember when we get into it, the tone will change as the parabola gets more excessive. But until then, waiting for a couple more things to develop there on total 3, looking for that bull flag to get presented over there. If that bull flag gets presented on total 3 after hanging out down here at the lows for a little while, we may revisit this whole structure, this whole setup in here to say maybe this range has already come to a conclusion. Until then, I'm just going to leave it there until I feel more confident that that bull flag has gotten presented. But still, the big picture, regardless of distribution for Bitcoin or expansion, I think we still have time for an optimistic future here in the cryptocurrency market. And that's usually where the excessive, insane, euphoria, crazy, it's never going to stop, up forever, Bitcoin reserves with the government stuff happens, right? So things are looking okay. Nothing broken here. Nothing broken here on total 3. Typical stuff when you're trying to go into an expansion. And right now, we'll just kind of look for things to settle down after yesterday's craziness. Man, we've seen volatility many times when it comes from the Fed, but even yesterday's, that was a lot of volatility. I mean, for the VIX to spike that high, we don't usually see that much. Like I've done, I don't know, you guys may know, but I'd have to look it up, maybe 10 or 15 of those Fed live streams. And that's the most volatile Fed live stream we've ever done. So pretty crazy. So we tend to see a little bit more volatility here the day after as the market really kind of digests the information that it received. And then things start to kind of settle down tomorrow on Friday and then heading into next week. So, all right, there you go. That's what's going on in the markets. Get this video out kind of early as we get ready to kickstart and the stock market opens up. I hope you guys are doing all right. I want to thank you all so much for watching. You can check out my newsletter over here on blockchainbacker.substack.com. We talk about getting ready for crypto's parabolic moment, examining parabolic expansions, my portfolio performance and exit psychology, preparing and restructuring. So we talk about what parabolas look like, talk about the 20 coin portfolio I purchased back in September, and then talk about a lot about the exit stuff when it comes to psychology and the difficulty of it and the crowd, preparing and then restructuring of what that would look like with some Excel sheets and showing how I would work that out. That's available for you over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. I audio record all of them. The most recent one was 48 minutes, and you do get access to all the past ones if you sign up for the newsletter. You can check out bcbacker.com with over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. There are links down here in the descriptions of each of my videos to bcbacker.com and to the newsletter right there at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, congrats on surviving yesterday. And I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.